I'd like to welcome you all to a celebration of our retiring President John Walton's 39 years of being a very successful principal at the Heatherley School of Fine Art. Now, before I say anything else, I'd like to thank Mary, who has done an amazing amount in preparation for this evening. And she's also typed up John's speech. And
3 times.
Also, you've done his John's forms for his charity, and she's toiled long hours into the evening to do all this. So I think Mary deserves a round of applause.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm not going to talk very much because I really want Daphne to speak and I want John to speak, but I'm going to say that I think John has made Heatherley's the school that it is today. He's created it as a stronghold of the continuing practice of figurative art. Now, it is indeed a great honour to succeed John and a true challenge to fill his shoes. Now, I've known John since 2008 in his capacity as a very fine portrait painter, because all 3 of us are members of the Royal Society of Portrait Painters. Some of you have known John a lot longer, and in fact, some of you got your first teaching job from John. So, so I think it's therefore very fitting that I asked Daphne, who is actually one of those people who got her first teaching job from John, to say a few words about John. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Well, an occasion like this can be like walking a tightrope, can't it? Like a best man speech. Will it be anodyne, or will it be too revealing? The purpose of this evening, however, is to thank John Walton. So I will start with the good stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of former students are grateful to have had the opportunity of studying and enjoying themselves at Heatherley's. It is a much-loved institution. Without John, Heatherley's would undoubtedly have disappeared. This last 40 years would simply not have happened. Without him, those students would almost certainly not have had the opportunity to learn the rudiments of representational painting, drawing, and sculpture, because these skills are seldom any longer taught in the state colleges or anywhere else very much. Every single year, current or former Heatherley students achieve success in exhibiting their work with the Royal Society of Portrait Painters, with the BP Award, the National Portrait Gallery, and in many other open exhibitions. Heatherley students have even been commissioned to erect public sculpture in the squares of London. Those who directly inspired and taught them, the teaching staff, have been hugely loyal. One of the skills required of a principal is the ability to select good staff. So John must have been exceptionally good at it. John developed a wonderfully symbiotic relationship with the heads of department in particular, allowing them substantial freedom to teach in their own way and being rewarded by their academic successes and, in general, great loyalty. Since the mid-1980s, Susan Engeldow has run what may still be the only portrait diploma in the country, which is often oversubscribed, and without which it is arguable that the school would have had far less stability. For a country which, historically, has been to the fore in fostering portraiture, the Heatherley Portrait Diploma may prove to be, albeit in a small way, of national importance. Tony Mott, Director of Studies, masterminded continuing studies for those who graduated from courses elsewhere, feeling that something had been missing. something that perhaps only Heatherleys could supply. And then there is Veronica Ricks, Veronica, head of sculpture and deputy principal, who has so often exceeded the call to duty in raising money for a new sculpture studio in the old building, actively researching alternative sites when that building was under threat, and not least deputising for John during his sadly all too frequent absences during these last few years. We are, of course, hugely grateful to them. But now is the time for all those of us who, like them, were given the opportunity to earn a living whilst continuing our own practice, to thank John for giving us an amazing career opportunity. For some, it has lasted for most of those 40 years. As our former patron, Sir Hugh Casson, said, it is one of the functions of an art school to provide work for artists, and provide work Heatherleys certainly has. Since I, along with Susan, was recruited by John directly from the Slade in the 1970s, when we were still postgraduate students, I have more reason than most to be thankful to John. This is what he did for me. Besides providing some of my earliest experiences in teaching, he also passed on the odd minor commission. And I well recall a certain taxi journey from the Slade hostel, where I lived, being squeezed between John and the owner of a minor Mayfair club, who wanted me to copy a portrait of Charles James Fox. Being squeezed are the operative words. The female sex appeared to be much on John's mind during those early years at Warwick Square. Perhaps because he had become a lone parent of his sweet little boy, Roland, who is here fully bearded tonight. And that imposed certain restrictions. Lunch breaks in the pub would bring to mind what he was missing, and following his staff back to the school, he would call out in his forthright way, "Good childbearing hips, Engledow!" And "You are going to have difficulty in childbirth, Todd." He was right. But despite the banter and his frequent assertion at full velocity that he was a red-blooded male, not in any doubt, I think we all knew we were safe from the sort of predatory behaviour which art colleges can be notorious for. And if this sounds gruesome to the young, bear in mind that we were young and slim in those days, as indeed Susan still is. John allowed me to run my own independent Saturday classes in the Heatherley building, a salutary but invaluable experience, since I found at the end of a year that after allowing real Heatherley students free entry and paying the model, I had made less than 50 quid. He later risked making me his first director of studies, but almost immediately I ran away to Spain to paint landscapes. Upon my return 2 years later, by then a single parent myself, needing work, he very soon made me director of studies again, and this time, I hope he feels, I was of a little more use in helping him and his team to expand the school fourfold in the next 6 years. During this time, John also had an effect on my painting career outside the school, because when I was up for election at the Royal Society of Portrait Painters, I'm told I had a rival whose sympathisers kept stacking my work behind the door. John kept getting it out again. Without that kind intervention, my life would have been very different. But by far the best thing that John did for me while I was away in Spain was to appoint a bursar who remained for 20 years, one Terry Driscoll, and thus, 4 years later, to provide me with a husband, which I think some present, especially amongst the trustees, would think no easy task. So, gosh, John, I owe you not just my livelihood, but my entire life and happiness. And I know that John continues to look out for Heatherley staff and students wherever he can. Mine is just one life, upon which John's decisions and interventions have had, I can't read, sorry, have had, anyway, a particularly good effect. A profound effect, I wrote. But I think almost everyone in this room and everyone in the wider Heatherley family has reason to be grateful. Thank you, John.
Daphne, yeah, marvellous.